you.
Good evening and welcome to this conversation. I'm Faye D'Souza and thank you for joining in. I know that there is a lot of very screaming, shouting activity going on in various news channels about various investigations. But sometimes we have to realize that problems get solved over the long term if we sit down and talk about them, rather than screaming and shouting about it only when it's exciting. So, this series, Police Dialogues, which my team is producing along with the very wonderful people at VLOG and the Indian Police Foundation, is meant to talk about the issues that we face with policing in India, the issues that the policemen are facing, the police officers are facing, that citizens are facing, and how we can fix it in the long term administratively, how we can fix it as citizens, what we can do, and what needs to be done from within government to actually improve the way policing is done in India. Now, to give you a recap, of course, if you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, you can catch the previous episode.
What has happened?
Sorry for that disturbance. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, you can catch our previous episodes, which was our conversation with Julio Ribeiro about the state of policing in India, and our conversation last week, Mr. N. Ramchandran and Ms. Veera Borbankar, on basically how we can improve the quality of life of our policemen and our police officers, and how that will possibly lead to better policing as well, both administratively and personally. Today we're going to talk about something that's very sensitive and that's very important. The question is, are our police citizen friendly? And I want to give you a very simple example. We all watch a lot of American television and American movies, and we know that from the time they're very small, citizens of that country are taught the number 911. If you're ever in trouble, if you're scared, if you're alone, you pick up the phone and you call 911, and a police person will come and help you. The police person will help you. But in India, it's the exact opposite. Nobody wants to go to a police station really. Police ki chakkar mein kisi ko nahi padna. People want to stay away from the police. Children are scared of the police. They're told if you don't eat your vegetables, then police uncle will come and take you and go. So the police is built into something that is scary. But is that just stories we tell our children? Or is there a reason why people in this city are scared, or people in this country are scared of the police? Are the police truly citizen friendly? And if not, why are they not citizen friendly? And what can be done to bridge that gap? Well, I have very interesting people with me today on the conversation, and of course we will be taking questions from our audiences on Facebook and on YouTube. So this is who we are. One of my most favorite people to have a conversation with in IPS or otherwise is Mr. D. Shivanandan. He's the former police commissioner of the city of Mumbai and the DGP of Maharashtra. And he came back to take care of Mumbai after the 26/11 attacks in 2008. He set up the safety sort of protocol in Mumbai as to how Mumbai will be kept safe from any further terror attacks. And he's a well-known, highly regarded IPS officer. A lot of people I have spoken to have said that he's unflinching in his commitment to keeping the system clean without corruption. And he is the most honest officers we've seen in the corridors of our IPS system. So Mr. Shivanandan has been very kind and agreed to give us his time. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Ms. Neha Sinha is the Deputy Director and Associate Fellow of the IDFC Institute. We're an independent non-profit think tank in Mumbai that works on governance and state capacity issues. She's actually currently on an advising role for India's first Pan-India Crime Victimization Survey. Now, we're going to find out what that means, but basically, she's looking into this question of the police being people-friendly from a research point of view. Ms. Devika Nadig is the director of Shikshangan's education's initiatives, and she's going to bring in the idea of using schools to improve the relationship between citizens and and the police. So I welcome all of you to this conversation, and thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us, Mr. Shivanandan. I will start with you. Although in one very few instances where we find you completely outnumbered on the panel, you're the only gentleman on this panel. So, so welcome to the panel. My first question to you is this: the truth is, and I'm going to keep all the tough questions for Mr. Shivanandan. The truth is, right now, there is a great deal of lack of faith in the policing system. So there are two aspects, right? One is the relationship citizens have with the local beat constable or with the head constable, and whether or not we're comfortable talking to him. But on a larger point of view right now, given what has happened, played out in the CBI over the last 2 years, and the fights that have happened over corruption, given how there is such a large faith about the fact that state police will function for the state government, central agencies will function for the central government, and they will just fight each other depending on who is in power. In a situation where police functions allegedly like an extension of the political party they serve, how will that police ever be citizen friendly, and how will I ever trust that police to do what is best for citizens?
Ms. Faye, thank you so much for taking me on your panel. And I'm going to start with a positive note that Indian police is not citizen unfriendly. They are friendly. Why and how this perception came and all, when you give me a chance, I will explain. But as of now, if you look at the whole country, we can't be comparing Bihar police and all, because these are all cultures, and the police reflects exactly the society's culture, like Mumbai police reflecting the Mumbai people's culture, sophistication. So that is how we can divide and analyze. If you ask me why the police has got such a kind of a thing, I request you not to look at only this case. That is this CBI versus Bihar police versus Maharashtra police and all that. This is a very media-driven case. But if we can look at all other events, we have had a very cohesive police forces all over this country. And they have been helping, and I have been there for the last 36 years. I was there in the police force, and wherever one phone call from a director general or a commissioner of police, it worked like a miracle. Everyone went there and did their job and came back. They were never quarantined in any place. But this one is unspecific. So I would like to say the police is friendly and they are doing very well. Look at the COVID times. Forget Sushant Singh Rajput's case, whatever it is, murder or hanging or whatever it is. But if you look at that and look at the pandemic or an earthquake or a flood in Kerala or in Maharashtra, or for example, the Nisarga, that typhoon we had, the cyclone we had recently, it is the police who reaches out. The first responders to any disaster, whether it is Bhopal gas tragedy or anything, even in the front, China, 1962, the first ones who lost their life is the policemen. So that is how we are the first responders, and we have been doing very well. What happened is the folklore, the media, the cinema, and various others. Watch a movie called The Class of 1983. Absolute rubbish. After seeing that, nobody will believe ever that the police is following the constitution, the law, which I have been working for without flinching, as you rightly said. But then my story is not told in the Netflix, but the Class of 83, absolutely fictitious and unworthy of spending 1 minute. I have not seen it, but then I have seen the trailer. So that is how this is made. If you give me a time, I would like to say that in 1857, after the First War of Independence or Sepoy Mutiny, whatever they call it, the Indian police was formed, and that Act 1861 was made by Sir Robert Peel. And when he made a police for Ireland and for England, that was people friendly. That London Bobby was born, and the systems were different. The Act was different. Everything was people friendly. But this 1861 Act, even now we are carrying like a yoke on our shoulders. It has not been changed. That one was made by those British East India Company people to rule this country, and then the police force was subjugated to their desire authority, and they wanted to perpetuate themselves by ruling with a lathi or iron rod or whatever it is. That is what is the legacy we are carrying. After that, what we did, we never changed the Police Act from 1861. The Model Police Act and all was made, but nobody has followed that. And then your various police commissions, 1902, 1977, Dharmavira Commission, and then recently Mr. Prakash Singh went to Supreme Court in 2005, and the rulings were made, but nobody followed all those things, that is where the police is not able to change. The uniform, we have changed only from half pants to full pants. That's about it. And maybe the lathi which they carry has become a fiberglass lathi. Otherwise, they have been serving the rulers, the powers that be, and even today we have inherited that kind of a legacy. This is our background. How we can change? We can change it overnight. If only we have the will, we can change it overnight, and the entire people will become people friendly. But as far as Mumbai is concerned, I want to remind all of you, July 25th, when there was a flood completely, or recently, whatever flood, or whatever happened, it is the Mumbai police which came and helped them absolutely. As far as traffic people are concerned in the whole country, your car gets stalled. It is in the rainy day. It is a policeman who comes and pushes it there and then takes you to the side and helps you. You get stranded at 2 o'clock. You can trust a policeman here. You said no child is trusting. No, they all trust. Any number of women would say that they are safe in Mumbai even in the middle of the night. So that's a certificate which the Mumbai police got it. Maharashtra police, then of course I would agree with you. The same reputation should spread far and wide. All over the country, we should have one standard police image, and people should be taught. How we can do it? Absolutely. If you give me a chance, I will tell you how we can do that. With that, I stop.
Mr. Shivanandan, a very quick question, and this is what a lot of people are asking. It is that, is there a place where citizens can go to complain if they feel that they have met someone in the police station who has been unfair to them, or has not handled the problem, or has not written a complaint?
I will tell you, ma'am. I'll tell you that. Today, 98% of the police force is that of constables and head constables. Okay, they're the bulk of the police force. The officers are all much less. But if anyone goes to a police officer wearing 2 stars or 3 stars and talks to him, the job is done. Anyone who has visited a police station, his perception of police is different from those people who have never met a policeman or never interacted with that. Kindly, any number of researchers can prove that. Okay, now when you go to a police station and nothing happens there, section 154 says how you can register a crime or a complaint. You meet the other senior officers or go home and send it by reply paid post. And the superintendent of police or the DCP or the additional CP is supposed to register the case and get back to you. This is the law, and this is what has to happen. Today, we got to upload it in the video or upload it in the social media, and police will come running to you. I remember a photograph which appeared in the social media where a constable is bending to tie the shoelaces of an additional SP in Uttar Pradesh, and that was clicked, a picture was clicked and uploaded in the social media. Next day, the additional SP was suspended. So you can file a case by approaching the senior people. There is a website. You can reach out to the Commissioner of the Police. We are all open. When I joined as the Commissioner of Police, my number appeared in the Times of India on the first page on the first day of joining. 982-151-15333. That never stopped ringing after that. I gave my email ID, dsiva100@gmail.com. Even today, it is the same. I do get complaints. I do help people because in my personal capacity. So that way, registering a case is not a big deal. And same, you can register a case anywhere in the country, and that is supposed to be sent under 0 number to the relevant police station where the crime has happened. So today, in this modern day, where we are so much technically superior, not getting a case registered is a very, not a very difficult process. It's easy to register.
Mr. Shivanandan, does the police invariably just emulate the boss, the commissioner, whoever is in charge? Is it largely up to those who are leading the force in every city as to how friendly they are going to be?
I agree. By and large, I agree. But then when you get a good leader, he is effervescent and he is efficient and he is honest, the entire police force reflects his glory, and then the flag flies very high. And if you bring a person who is the other way around, then obviously the police force starts emulating him. So the question is, again, I coming back to this Prakash Singh judgment of Supreme Court. They said how a DGP or how the top leaders have to be selected, how a panel has to be made, and how 2 years time be given. They should not be hassled every now and then. All that has been given. So that kind of a confidence is given to a leader who is well selected for his reputation, honesty, and for the unblemished service he has done earlier. Obviously, the whole police force will reflect that. At least I was DCP here, additional CP, joint CP, and CP. Things were absolutely, they were approaching and the people were friendly. There was not a problem we had. I didn't see much that way.
Okay, and I'll come back to Mr. Shivanandan's idea of it can be changed overnight, which I find interesting because police is a state subject, which means that every state has its own policies, and of course, then there is this central policy as well. But we'll come back to that after everyone's had a chance to put their opening statements forward. Let me bring in Neha Sinha. Neha, thank you for joining us. If you could take
Thank you
us
so much.
to your research, your work on the ground has displayed so far, and what your learning has been about the police.
Yeah, so Faye, I like to say that police is the first interface for citizen to to the state. And so this question is really value loaded. It's at the center of public service reforms. We should look at it from two aspects. What's the pace of response and what's the quality of response? And most of the time, this actually comes through anecdotes, media coverage of news, etc. What we really need is to actually collect data from the ground and then look at those things which are happening on the ground and assess them properly. So we did actually a survey back in 2017 in metros. And what we ended up finding was quite surprising. So we asked people if they were victims of certain crimes and if they reported the crime to the police and what their feedback was. We found that only a small percentage of crime is registered with the police, but the feedback of those who registered an FIR was good. In every city, more than half of the victims were satisfied with their interaction. The reasons for satisfaction was also quite embedded in soft skills. So things like police being prompt, quite attentive to and listening to the victim, writing down the complaint with a lot of accuracy. And those who were dissatisfied were unhappy due to the police refusing to register, or they were ill-mannered, amongst other things. So like the idea behind doing this kind of work was essentially that we have our views embedded into perceptions which have grown from years over years, but we don't really collect data and we don't really understand what the problem is. We need to diagnose. Maybe our assumptions are wrong. But at the same time, I'll also like to say that perceptions guide people a lot. So in our case, a majority of people in the survey, they actually said that they did not go to the police because they thought that police will not entertain them, or they were worried about being stuck in police and court matters. So these are assumptions which have been built over years because of various reasons, like what Mr. D. Shivanandan was saying. There's a colonial legacy. People worry that police is actually a state instrument. It's embedded in their consciousness. So it's really difficult to break away from the perceptions that people have, and its perceptions may not exactly be what reality is. That's somewhat the survey showed, and we did a 20,000 household survey across 4 metros. It was quite enlightening, and we kind of presented it at different forums, at the ministries, at police, at the state and city police departments. And there was,
Neha, of the research that you had done, what was the most? I mean, one would assume that if you do research on policing right now, most of the findings would be obvious. We'd already know how people feel. Was there anything in the research that you found was out of ordinary that you had not expected?
So Out of ordinary, yes, actually, we talked a lot about safety because we thought safety is really important, especially for women and children, and it actually provides equal opportunity, and that's the most basic and the most principal role of police to provide, and we tend to forget that aspect a lot. The fact that safety is what makes a lot of difference, and Mumbai, of course, stands out in that. And the survey also showed that Mumbai is much better compared to other cities. Uh, the one thing which came across in certain cities were that people were not too worried about their safety. At the same time, in case of Delhi, we found that people were almost as worried about men being outside their homes as they were about women being outside their homes. So it was quite eye opening to us, and in fact, we are now the Ministry of Home Affairs under Bureau of Police Research and Development is rolling out a survey. I'm advising them on their executive committee. I'm there, so it's being anchored by Bureau of Police Research, and what it will be done across India, and they'll be collecting data from across all the ranges. They'll also be collecting data not just from the households, but also from policemen and people like the station house officers who are actually on the ground, and not just asking them as to what they do, and but also the problems that they face on trainings, on very long hours that
And Neha,
that
what
they
will
have
be
to.
done with this data?
First of all, the data needs to be out. We need to understand. So, in terms of usage of the data, ideally, so I'll give you a historical perspective. Uh, Developed countries like the UK has been doing this kind of survey since the 1970s and 80s. So it's actually complementing the official records which the police has in terms of registered FIRs. And so this helps in understanding the problems on the ground, and so
Okay.
they are able to use it to be able to invest in the right way, to be able to say provide more resources in terms of money, PCR vans, people. So it's basically a diagnostic tool. We can't diagnose issues just through anecdotes and just through a few media reports. We need to basically understand the problems on the ground in a more like robust fashion, and that's the idea behind doing something like this.
Actually really interesting because we do understand that normally it is the police administration. So the IPS officers who are in charge of administration who decide, and the commissioner's office who decides what is needed, where the investment will go, what infrastructure will be installed. And a lot of times those decisions are right. But it's interesting that someone's actually doing a survey of the constables and the SHOs on the ground to find out what is needed. I must second one thing, of course, that Neha Sinha did say. In my career as a journalist, I've worked in Bangalore, in Mumbai, in Delhi, and in Hyderabad. And I've spent some time, traveling in and out of Chennai and dealing with the police there as well. I can tell you, with beyond a shadow of doubt, the Mumbai police is the friendliest police you can find. It's also the most helpful and the most respectful when it comes to women. As very young reporters, we used to hang around police stations. We used to drink chai. We used to ask questions, and the policemen would sit and explain things to us. Especially, I was tracking the EOW, so it required explanation as to what the nature of the crime was and things like that. But we never felt unsafe. Whereas in a lot of other cities, and I'll take that question to Devika as well. In a lot of other cities, if you can't speak the local language, you're almost useless. They won't even talk to you in a police station. If you go to a police station in Karnataka and you can't speak Kannada, or you can't speak Tamil in Tamil Nadu, or you can't speak Malayalam, they won't actually consider you at all. And then, of course, there is the police of, say, Noida or Delhi or any of these other places where people would rather not go it anyway. And most of the dealing would happen if you scratched your car. People would make a deal saying, "Acha, listen, I will pay you this much. Let's just not go to the police station at all." So I mean, there are varied degrees, and maybe that reflects the society or the space that's being monitored by these policemen. So Devika, how it is different in every city, right? So how do we how do we understand this, and how can this change through education or otherwise?
Sure. Thank you, Faye, for having me on the show. So, I was just thinking about this and wondering what I should be sharing today, this evening. And I was thinking that all my life I've been in education, in school as well as higher education, and we always begin by telling children about the friendly policeman. I mean, the whole title of this evening's talk is the police citizen friendly, and that's the kind of mental model that we create for our children. So, what Neha said about embedded patterns, it actually, speaking from an education point of view, it has its roots in the way our neural pathways connect with each other. I mean, that's the way we form patterns about certain people's behavior. Now, the thing is that these patterns are embedded in emotions, which is why it is so difficult to change patterns that human beings are forming. I can see a lot of messages which are coming into the comment box, and I can see the patterns which have been formed clearly over a period of time and because of the experiences with police. So to come back to what we're discussing, I think that the education system for a long time helps in forming the right patterns and the right mental model, which is about trust. It is about trust that there is a policeman, he's a custodian of certain values. He's also probably being viewed as standing between you and your aspirations. Sometimes your aspirations probably are risk-filled aspirations, but he's a friendly policeman. That's what we're telling them. And then the first interaction for the students is when they become 18. At 18, they're also asserting rights. And they're also probably not really paying attention to responsibilities. And their first interaction is with the traffic police. A new vehicle, new freedom, gay abandon, no parental control, finally, no institutional control. And to come to you, Faye, exactly this is what I've seen in Pune city. You have to know Marathi. You have to know the local language. Otherwise, there is discrimination, not just for language. It's gender, it's language, it's also your social, where you're coming from. And so that's the thing. And what's happening, I think the beauty, like I like to say, the beauty of India, I mean, what achieved national integration, I think, is the IT sector. Because the Hinjavadi in Pune or Dharamani Park in Chennai or something in Hyderabad or Bangalore, Infosys, the electronic city, it brought so much of youth to every city from different parts of the country. They don't know the city's language. Now, these are the youth who are earning good salaries, zooming around on their two-wheelers and so on, and that's their first interaction. So what happens that this mistrust begins to build, and I don't think it's so much about corruption. I mean, a lot of people might disagree, but I don't think corruption is the issue at all in police, because I think that's a very small thing. I think the bigger issue is an issue of their attitude. Now, which has obviously been hardened, because we must remember, I mean, of course, we know that the police constable downwards is constantly interacting with hardened people. They're constantly there. Even now in COVID, so much of comorbidity because of the poor health conditions. And Mr. Shivanandan pointed to 1861 and right up to Mr. Prakash Singh, where there have been attempts for reform, but nothing is implemented. We know, and I am not from police, but as an aware citizen, I'm aware of each of these commissions which were set up and what happened from Morarji Desai and so on, and why was nothing implemented. But the thing is that those reforms are not happening, and therefore the police conditions are not changing, and that is not helping them change their behavior. And that's the way I look at it. And so I think that, but yes, I think if you talk to people, and Neha was providing so much of data, there are a lot of good experiences as well. I mean, there are a lot of great experiences. I mean, I just sent out some messages to a couple of my friends because I was to be on this show. A question which I have never asked, in my various groups, that what have been your experiences with police? And everybody was taken aback. Why do you want to know? And I said, hey, you know what? I want this show, and sent them this poster. And they said, what? And the beauty is that majority of my friends and relatives said good experiences, And I want to definitely talk about my rural experiences. I live 35 kilometers away from Pune city in the Sayadri range in the forest. It's kind of reserve forest, but I'm just next to the forest. And the rural police, at the risk of taking a minute more and also to bring in a little bit of light-hearted humor, is I lost my hound, a beautiful Mudhol hound, a caravan hound, I'd gone all the way to Mudhol to get these hounds because I live in the wilderness. And she just ran out of my home one day chasing something wild. I was like a woman berserk, driving all over the hills and valleys, stopping and asking every person, did you see this dog? I was carrying a picture. Till a student of mine, who has, of course, cleared the IPS and he's in Telangana now, said, why don't you go to SP Rural? And I said, for what? For a lost dog? And he said, yes, go there and they will help you. So I was in the Pune Rural headquarters. And I was, what I wrote on the visitor slip? Lost my hound. And I was, I didn't know what to say. And, I don't know whether I can take his name, but what an experience. I was given a warm cup of tea because I was so distressed. And do you know what he did? He actually beamed the picture of haiku, which is a poetry, to every single police patil in every single village where I live. And everybody was looking for her. And that was the first time in my life, thank God, that the police visited my home. And they said that, Kutra harole ka in Marathi, have you lost your dog? And I said, yes. And are you here for that? And they said, yes. So I reciprocated with a warm cup of tea. And I felt that, they did their best. Well, I lost my hound, but I found a friend in police. And I think that that's a great experience. But yes, when I come back and if you ask me and if you give me an opportunity, I would like to talk about, therefore, what can we do about changing this mental model that people have developed. And I think that points to some training.
Devika, I want to point out just one thing that you did say in your entire story. You said the only time, thank God, a policeman visited my house was because my dog. So there's a sort of inherent, and society sees it like that, right? If a police person comes to your house, unke ghar police aayi, hi. This is like a big embarrassment. And we see it again, like Shiva sir pointed out, we see it in the films where, there's this whole, tere wajah se hamare ghar mein police aayi hai. There's this really bad, it's really bad invitation to the policeman walking into your house. Like he's a sign of bad things to come, that he's a official acknowledgement that you are a failure or you failed in some way as a citizen. So
I think you got it right.
How do we fix that? How is it? How do we create a system where we are okay it's okay for the police to visit us and have a cup of tea? I know that there are people who need to get their passports verified who would rather go to the police station and do it than have the cop come to their house because they just see that as an uncomfortable relationship. So this is what we're trying to break, right? Because at the end of the day, it has to be a two-way street. We have to be friendly if we want the cops to be friendly with us. But I'm going to take Mr. Shivanandan up on that offer that he made in the beginning of the show, which is there is an overnight solution. I'm very curious to know what overnight solution will solve this problem, which according to our panelists exists from the British Raj. Mr. Shivanandan, what is the overnight solution?
Ma'am, I would say I should rest my case after Madam Devika's argument that she went to SP Rural and got this royal treatment. That's what I mentioned earlier in my say that when you meet a police officer with 2 stars or 3 stars, your experience is what Madam Neha said, that they all said they were treated very well. And we are all talking about Maharashtra police. Let us always go to UP police or Bihar police. The experience can be different, but that's fine. But what I want to say is, what is the magic wand I am trying to say? One is registration of case. I mentioned that you communicate through a computer or through various means. 154 could be taken care of. There is a section 157 CRPC where they say if any property is lost below 50 rupees or less in value, police can say that, okay, I don't register this case. This is less known to people. But in India, what happens is people do not insure their property, which is kept, valuables particularly. And when it is lost, they immediately will blame the servants or anybody and then expect the police to recover and give it to them. So my request is, if you can enhance the value of 157 CRPC, and allow police to say that I'll give you a receipt of having lost this property, you claim insurance. If that kind of a habit can be brought in, saying that all valuables we get in the bank locker and whatever is kept, then be insured about it, and the police is not overburdened to hammer people and recover. Then death in custody, murder in the police station, all those things can be avoided. The next one is, can we split law and order and crime investigation separate? This is again Mr. Prakash's judgment. That doesn't cost you much. And then it can be done. Special units like homicide squads and various other squads can come and spend little money on FSL, a van or a unit and things like that, going along and investigating and things like that. This is all happening. Actually, Maharashtra is happening. I had submitted proposal. It is happening. Elsewhere also it can happen. The main point I would like to say, overnight solution is, we have 4 varieties of recruitments at 4 different levels. One is a constable. Earlier it was the 8th standard, pass or fail, whatever it is. Now it is metric. So can we recruit people only who are graduates and stop at the next recruitment, that is sub-inspector, then deputy superintendent of police and IPS. I would like to inform the entire audience, you remove 2 of the levels of entry and allow the constables to become deputy commissioner of police or superintendent of police or additional commissioner of police or DIG. That's what is happening in London. You don't need a great reform for this. Stop recruiting the sub-inspector level and take all graduates as constables. Whoever is doing well, whoever is enterprising will become officer and will become inspector, deputy superintendent of police and above. If that is the incentive is given. Unfortunately, 95% of the police force, which is constable and head constable, they take 30 years to get the next promotion, and there they end. That is where there is no incentive at all. So if this is done, IPS can be there. Or if you want to abolish, anyone says abolish IPS, do that. But then let us not have multiple levels where people are frozen and then they have nothing to look forward to. And as per the police manual, anybody doesn't like the face of a head constable, his rank can be reduced. Or he spent 30 years to reach that place and you reduce him in rank for nothing. So this is one where this is what is happening in London, where a patrolman becomes the chief constable or the commissioner of police. He knows the job. He has come up, whoever that. You earlier mentioned about the US example. Yes, even here, people can ring up the control room. Elderly people give a ring in the middle of the night and they have a chat. They want a bag of a sachet of milk or medicines. Our people do help. But okay, these are all different examples. But then I harp on officer-oriented policing. And that means this 95% of the constables and that head constables can be reduced and make more officers who can speak maybe multiple languages like English and Marathi and Hindi and things like that. So then the number of cases which are registered, for example, in Mumbai city, in the last, let us say 20 years, it is frozen at 25,000 cases a year because the number of officers remaining the same, multiplied by 5, and that is the registration. So when the incidence takes place, people can go or may not go, but the registration and the incidence, there is a difference. That's a lot of difference is there because the cases are not registered. That's called burking in the police language, minimizing. Serious cases are minimized to lesser level. All this can happen, all this can reduce immediately if we can have more of officers and less of policemen. What do we do with the lesser policemen? Improve technology. We have CCTV, we have facial recognition, we have all the kind of data analysis, and so many things have come into that. Replace that. Anyway, David Bailey in his book says, Future of Policing, that 95% of the police jobs are all done by private people. Look at Come to My Society. The entire policing is done by the security guards, banks, various other places. Everything is done. So that is one magic solution, overnight solution I can give. The next one is the age of recruitment. Oh, you want not a politically inclined person, you want a secularistic person, but then how can you recruit people at the age of 28 and plus 5 for certain special category of people? So if I'm going to recruit people in the IPS or in any other rank for that matter, at the age of 33, I cannot mold them. I cannot mold them as you want them to be molded. So let us freeze the recruitment level at the age of, let us say, 23, 24, graduate and 1 or 2 years, and then put them there. what happened in a hurry, overnight production of policemen, all these things. Our police training for the sub-inspectors, earlier it was 2 years, now it has become 1 year. In 1 year also, they are exposed to a lot of variety of law and order and all that. So they're half-baked people. They don't know the law. So let us teach them, give them proper training, and then if you can meet an officer and speak any language, he is going to respond to you well. That is what the other two panelists have mentioned that. So that is the overnight solution I'm saying. Let us not dump uneducated people. And then the next point is, can we give them a little bit more salary? We are paying them today the unskilled laborer salary. And that is what they are there. The police lines in Thane, which I demolished and built multiple stories, was built in 1920. Even now, multiple lines are there. People are living there. Early morning, they will carry a lota and visit the lavatory, which is a furlong or two away in the rain. So that is the problem. So can this be addressed too? What about the workplace? The workplaces are dungeons. When women police, we are taking 30% of the police women. I recruited 30% when I was in charge of recruitment, wherever it is. If that is it, can we not give them better workplace where they can change and they can relax, or restrooms and all that? All of them placed on the roads in the traffic branch, they're 20-30%, 20% at least they are there. But then they can't visit any loo. What is it about? Can't we make all this needs is just money? We don't have to change the police act. We don't have to say politicians have to be off my back and all that. Okay, let them do whatever they want. But these things can be done. So that is the age has to be less, where we can mold them. And then the recruitment 4 levels can be reduced to 2 levels. And education, take the graduate constables and allow them to grow. It will be an incentive. And training, poor training has to become rich training by making it 2 years or whatever it is. And then with the investment in the technology, we can have a force multiplier. But last point is, all 4 wings of the judicial system has to change simultaneously. It is not only police to bring good name. The pending cases are there for next 300 years. Cases are overloaded now. So let us change the police and the prosecution and the judiciary and the reformatory system called the jail. If all of them change a bit, for that we have to change the CRPC and the Evidence Act. If science and technology can be relied upon, definitely we can make an absolute difference. Now in this, political interference is not talked about, and various other things, loss and gain, is not talked about. Maybe a little bit of a budgeting would increase, but money, we are talking in a trillion. We are a $5 trillion economy we are going to be. Oh, why not? Spend some money on the police. The entire security and safety of 1.37 billion people is there with the local people. The last point I want to say is, what about vacancies? A study says only 77% of vacancies are filled up. The next is all vacant. Why? You want to save money? You don't want to recruit people? No, what about the burden? Already police is working 12 hours, 8 to 8. And they have no union. They have no association. They can't come together. And they can't express their grievances. Whatever steps to do, they do in this line of expressing their grievances together, they'll be sacked. Have you found a workforce under such kind of a slavery? It is slavery. So then again, leaders have to take the leadership in their hands and go about going to the government and putting it across. I took upon myself, I built 3 schools, one in Gadchiroli and one in Chandrapur and Thane. Thane, 3,000 children are studying, and in the last 14 years, not a single boy or girl failed, and they get 97% first class or distinction. We built a hospital, we built a stadium, all with public money. If they didn't like me, I don't think I would have been given money by the people. This money did not come from the government, it came from the people. 30 gymnasiums we built here. We built so much of infrastructure in Mumbai for the police, and all the money came from the people because they trusted that this guy will do something worthwhile. There I stop. Thank you.
Well, there's one very quick question before I bring in the other panelist, Mr. Shivanandan. People are saying that, yes, Mumbai police, there are a lot of people who are agreeing with the fact that Mumbai police is among the best in the country. But Amrit, for example, says, please talk about the current Delhi police and, why there's such a massive difference from city to city.
Delhi police is a mixture of. I said the police is just a mirror image of the society where they are brought from. So we are all, by and large, Mumbai police is from Satara and Ratnagiri and all that, and then they are all they can be molded to the one culture and things like that. Whereas there, it is people from Rajasthan, from Punjab, from Bihar, and various other states, and they join the police. Well, the people are also from there. The dominating culture is what is reflected in the Delhi police. And then there is a dichotomy in the Delhi police. The Delhi police is controlled by the MHA directly, and their salaries and all that comes from there. LG is their boss. That is the lieutenant governor is their boss, and the CM has no say. Then there is a dichotomy there. The commissioner of police doesn't report to the chief minister, who is the elected representative. So that, because of Delhi is the capital and all the foreigners come and foreign missions are there, and all the ministers and MPs and all that, because of that, the Delhi police is having a problem. But then it is a culture of the city and culture of the region, which the people will reflect.
I hope, Amrit, that's given you your answer. Let me just bring in the other panelists as well. Neha, the question of, and you did say that your studies are currently happening across the country. Mr. Shivanandan has offered solutions that yes.
Okay. It will happen because of COVID. It stopped. Yeah.
Have you found, and this is really the honest thing, have you found that administrations across different states are likely to be as welcoming of suggestions of change? Can you tell us if you believe that when you come up with your research and your findings, that is there a concern that some states might not be as open to these suggestions, or this implementation might not happen as quickly?
So yeah, absolutely. In fact, because law and order policing is a state subject, it needs to be this kind of a survey or diagnostic tool needs to be done at the state level. And even at the ministry's level, they want to do this for once, and they want the states to actually pick it up from the next round onwards. So, and in my own experience, different departments, different officers have different views about it. But when you really look deep into the data, and when you find problems of, say, lack of soft skill issues, etc., or the final beneath all these problems are actually issues like people not getting enough time off, they're not being trained, not enough resources being actually allocated towards police. So the diagnostic tool needs to be separated from the final issues. And so we need to actually understand why we are doing this. It's not to just pinpoint fingers at anyone, but rather to understand the problems on the ground and to address them in a very nuanced way. So unless we know that actually people are working 14 hours a day, they don't get a weekly off for the whole month, how will we even address that problem? And it manifests in many ways. People being rude, police officer, the constables or the officers on the ground being rude. It's about your own experiences, and then it becoming a two-way street, right? Like people, everybody has to be treated in a way so that they can treat others in the right way or the humane way.
Yeah, they have to be treated. Yes, you have answered my question. They have to be treated humanely if we expect them to treat anybody else humanely. Devika, we had a conversation before the show started about how if we had policemen visiting schools more often, interacting with school children visiting police stations, seeing what that is like. The idea of may I help you? So, for example, during the pandemic, my team and I visited many police stations in Mumbai. We were talking about the toll that the pandemic took on the Mumbai police, who really went headfirst, literally front and center for our battle against COVID. And a lot of them got sick and many of them died. Yes. And when we were in the police station, we realized that, there isn't a desk that says, may I help you? Come here. If you have a problem, this is where you come and ask. So we could see citizens walk in, look nervous. They're looking around, kahan jaye? Then one of them will nudge somebody else, jaake pucho. And then that person will go and ask, sir, ek wo complaint, sir. And, so there's this deference. There isn't that, that welcoming this thing. And even though this is perhaps the most welcoming police force that we're talking about. So how do we switch that where citizens are not afraid to walk up to a policeman and ask him for help? Because, filing a complaint is one thing, but asking for help and not being afraid is the very important thing. How do we do that?
Right. Yeah. So, since you sort of took me back into school and what could we do about it in school, all schools have this idea about introducing young children to what is perceived as the friendly community around them, because that's the way the curriculum is designed. You start from myself and you go to the outside world and get more and more familiar with what is outside of you, then your family, and then the outside world. So I think the schools are doing their bit. And like I mentioned in my earlier opportunity to speak on this show, I think that the perceptions which you're talking about, Faye, they begin to build only after adolescence. If I were to go back to my experiences of schools, and even for that matter, colleges, I remember, so they're very good in bandobast. Like, even though I'm speaking from Pune city, I had immense experience in, being the compare for mega events like the Ganesh festival and the Pune festival and all of that. So they're very good for that kind of bandobast, and they will speak with you politely, and, they're very strict about what they're doing. But when you call them, you call them to the school also, because you have these fetes and these fairs which are open to a lot of other youth and other students coming into your school. And the students begin to build perceptions at adolescence. Because like I said earlier, that there are aspirations, there are dreams, there are desires, hormones are jumping. And at that time, this policeman does not have a parental attitude at all. This policeman or this policewoman comes with a very corrective attitude. And the way they handle the youth is something which sets them back a couple of paces. So I think that it must begin. So I was really so impressed with how Mr. Shivanandan was explaining about how could you do it overnight, mentioning those 4 things about reform. But I also think that nothing much can really happen. Along with that, we need to be working on the way they are thinking about their own jobs. I don't think I'm sure there is a component of, in the police syllabus and curriculum, in their training, whether it's a year or 2 years, I'm quite sure that there must be a component of empathy and, a moral development and the sense of right and wrong. I'm not talking about the sense of good and bad, because that can be different for different people, but a sense of right and wrong, which we also teach our youth. And therefore, what is happening, that is getting neglected. I see such a parallel, Faye, to the education system. So I often joke that when you want to train an air hostess, with all my apologies, you need just a 3-month course, because she needs to speak a couple of sentences. May I bring you water, sir? Are you comfortable, sir? Is your tea hot enough, sir? And so on. But the preparation of a teacher, the preparation of somebody like a policeman.
Forgive me, Devika, I'm going to interrupt you there, because I don't believe that the job of cabin crew is only to bring you tea and coffee. There's a safety aspect to that job.
Absolutely.
That takes
I was saying something
of
else.
training. So, and I know that several people who work in airlines are going to write to me saying, hey, that's not fair. So
no, my apologies.
Yes.
I was saying that the training period which is required for making an effective teacher or making an effective policeman should be much longer, of an in-depth curriculum which takes care of the moral development, reflection, metacognition, thinking about what am I thinking, and also a great portion of it should be self-assessment. So I don't know whether that can happen. So I would suggest a lot of in-service training to be done. So on the one hand, you sensitize the police. On the other hand, you counsel the youth. And these two should go hand in hand for perceptions to change. Once perceptions are formed at adolescence, it's ingrained in your neural networks, and it becomes very hard to change that. So because you mentioned, how can we change perceptions? I think it cannot be a one-way process. It has to be from both sides. We should work on counseling the youth. We should also work on sensitizing the police. And in that respect only, I said that the training component must be much longer duration. Maybe on the Zoom platform, it can be done all the time. The in-service training, there's nothing to stop that. Because I think Shivanandan mentioned that using technology, you can have 1,000 policemen, policewomen logged in, And we could be constantly doing the in-service training for this bit about how do we sensitize them to the human need for somebody who's listening to me with care and empathy. I think empathy is the underlying factor. Yeah.
I find this interesting because having spoken to several people within IPS, having spent some time on the ground with police as well, and I actually just live right next door to a police station. So I see them, at 7 in the morning when, I go out to walk my dog. I see them at midnight. I can see the long hours they're working. It's obvious the kind of stress that these individuals are under. It's unlike the stress we go through in our jobs. And obviously, 2 questions to Mr. Shivanandan. One is, as opposed to being sort of polite and being able to differentiate between being parental and being sort of corrective, I think that invariably we find the police is under pressure. Both policemen and police, constables and police officers are under pressure, and you're trying to prevent anything bad from happening in any situation. You want to keep the situation under control. You don't want anybody to go out of control. You don't want any sort of violence to break out. The idea is to control a situation. And that, imagine that being your job all day, that amount of pressure on one individual. So is reducing stress, reducing pressure, like what you said, by increasing the number of officers who are trained, who are more qualified, increasing technology for surveillance, so it's not exactly up to, the human surveillance or the beat constable. And finally, the question of what we need to do as citizens. Obviously, this is a two-way street. Obviously, we need to do more. What is it that we need to do, Mr. Shivanandan?
Yes, I wanted to ask the question right from beginning. When you wanted the police to be friendly with the citizens, are the citizens being friendly with the police? So that's also a question we must answer. All the young people who are commenting obviously are not able to read, but they will be commenting about the corrupt police and taking orders from politicians and all that kind of thing. But they don't know that corruption does not start when police corruption, coal scam, 2.9 lakh crores or 7.9 lakh crores or something else. Helicopter deal, Vestar, no, what is that? Whatever helicopter deal where Christian Michael was involved and all that. These are all not done by the police. Come on, police is what? Traffic and all these young people who are commenting. Some constable stopped them and took maybe whatever little amount of money, but that's not running into lakhs of crores. Look at the 2G scam. What was the amount mentioned? And look at the CAG reports. And look at the other corporate, all your people who ran away from this country. Banks have been emptied and they have gone away. What's the amount of money? There's not corruption involved in that. Next job is, as you rightly mentioned, the kind of job given to the police is you go to police only when you have a problem. In the family, there is a problem, the husband, wife, and there is a problem, or you lost some money, or some murder, or dacoity. You go only to police when you have got a problem. When you are in good mood, no one goes to police because the job of the police is unenviable. Kindly remember that. You want to smoke on the road, we don't allow you. You want to drink every time, we don't allow you. Various other pleasures of life, as you can say, people want to have fun. But the police job is to see that it doesn't happen. So there is a prohibition law, there is an anti-smoking law, there is this law. Even implementing this COVID thing, all the shops be closed and people can't go within 2 kilometers, they can't go and all that. All that is not the job of the police, but they are given. So if they are all taken away, for example, implementing prohibition, there is a prohibition excise department. Take it away from them. You want to drink, you drink. Somebody else will handle. Police will not handle. So the negativity which is attached to the police, that parental thing, as Madam Devika said, the parental thing, if you take it away from them, give them only maintenance of law and order and crime prevention and detection, I'm sure a lot of tension would go away. See, when I recruited 3,000 people as Commissioner of Police Mumbai, a lakh of people, youngsters came. We took the best out of them. After 3 years, you look at them, he's a bundle of diseases. He's got diabetes, he's got hypertension, he's got suicidal depression, and all that they have. Most of the policemen die at the age of 37 to 41. And look at all of them on the road. They are not fit. They are less than 58, for heaven's sake. And they are all doing such kind of jobs which are, and they don't get food and they eat whatever is on the road and they don't go home and they don't get enough medicines and medical treatment and all that. So all that somebody, the society can also look at the police with a little bit of a sympathy. As far as schools are concerned, I have sent specially trained people to all the schools At least 30, 40, 50 schools, ma'am. They have a Shivanandan Cup of Excellence. Singania School in Thane or Cathedral or Bombay Scottish, whoever invited me, I didn't go with the boring lecture. I gave them a huge trophy so that they can be remembered. The police can be remembered. And then Madam Devika said that those guys come, they can be specially trained. The others, the leaders can prepare a special PPT and tell them what to talk. And I have organized shows of all the weapons. Take the police dogs, all the bomb disposal matter and all that. The 8,000 children from Singania school took 4 days to come and go and ask all the questions and things like that. So if we can do that, if everybody does that, I'm sure we can change. And the system of frightening the children, police ko bulauga and all that kind of thing, that also has to change, obviously. I want to say community policing as a concept, Kerala police has done wonderfully well. Tamil Nadu police also, they started Friends of Police and things like that. Maharashtra police has been doing Mohalla committee movement done by Mr. Rivero and Mr. Satish Sahani and all. That has brought a lot of it. There's a bridge between the communities after December 92 and 93 and things like that. So if we can take it to a different level. And for all these things which I sent, it's only a mental tweaking required, and it can come from the leadership. And there is no need for a huge budget for all. Visiting schools, one team of people going there, doing a PPT, it is absolutely simple. I have done it personally, and definitely the children were very, very happy to see a friendly policeman. Even in the Roti Bank, madam, I have taken the Dharavi children on Jawaharlal Nehru's birthday, November 14th. So that they could go to the police station, have some snacks, meet people, and talk to them and come back to see a friendly policeman and a friendly police face. But then that can be done all over the place. A module can be made. Can be made. Somebody like Madam Neha or anybody can make a module. But all the young people on the side are not able to read the comments. I want to tell them, how many of you have had an experience with the policeman and talking about police? If you have an experience and then you talk, I will take your words absolutely with all the humility. I will take it. But if you don't have an experience, you watch movies of Netflix and this and that, and you form your opinion, I think no. Madam Neha mentioned the survey. The Pune police or any other place, they have conducted surveys, and they have found that 70, 80, 90% of the people are happy about the police. You can say it is manipulated. Yes. Anybody can just say it is manipulated. Yes. No. Whoever had an experience with the police, they remember it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, we've run out of time. I think it fundamentally boils down to this. Obviously, there is a need for reform. There are ideas that have been submitted to various governments over the decades. But there's a reason fundamentally why this reform is not moving in. Because as citizens, we're not showing enough interest in bringing in reform into policing. We show interest in Vijay Mallya when he's out of the country. We show interest in Nirav Modi when he's fleeing the country. We ask questions of corruption and political interference. But when there is a question of reform, where we don't ask why no reform has been brought into our policing system, why their salaries have not been overhauled, why their salaries are not linked to inflation. We expect our salaries to be linked to inflation. Why is that? Why that sort of modernization is not happening? I mean, how many of us, for again the young people who are watching, spend time watching detective shows from overseas where there is forensics and there's scientific evidence collection? Do we ask if our own cops have access to that training? They have access to the infrastructure. They have access to the things that should give them the ability to do a good job for you. And that will only happen if citizens show more interest and push more in that direction. It will also happen if we show more interest, like I keep saying, in our neighborhood police station. If we get to know who the officers are, who the constables are in your neighborhood police station, build a relationship, because the police shouldn't be there only for when you need them. The police and citizens have to be a relationship. There has to be a relationship between the two. And this idea that it's the big bad boogeyman who will come and take you in the middle of the night if you don't eat your vegetables is something we need to break if we want to build a more wholesome society with better policing and a better relationship. That brings us to the end of this. Remember, every Tuesday at 5 o'clock, we bring you a conversation on how to improve policing and what we can do as citizens in order to push that forward. I want to thank my panelists for being so generous with your time and answering all of our questions. It's a pleasure as always. Thank you very much. For our audience, remember
thank you very much. I want to thank Faye and my fellow panelists. wonderful having. I learned a lot from Madam Devika and Madam Neha. I
Same
can, if
here,
I get
sir.
a chance to say
Thank
that, I will
you.
improve
Like
the conversation.
it
Happily.
is
Thank you so
famously
much.
said, it takes a village to raise a child. It will take the entire citizenry to bring police reforms. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.
For our
Thank
audience,
you.
remember to tune back in at 8 p.m. today as we come back with a conversation on this whole idea of digital schooling for children and whether or not it's working and what impact it's having really on their lives. That's at 8 p.m. today. Do tune in. Thanks for watching for now.